And also let me welcome Dr. Fadi Al-Bayadi, politician and former Member of Parliament. Thanks very much for coming in.
You're welcome, thank you.
Let me start off, ladies first, let me start off by hearing more about the workshop and what it aimed to do.
Sure. Well, in 2011, after the revolution happened in Egypt, our heart was with Egypt, and we wanted to stand with the Egyptian people. And when we learned of the constitution that was being drafted in 2013, I was able to speak with Dr. Al-Bayadi, His Excellency Amr Musa, on many of the main issues relying around the constitution. So when we went back to Iraq as a humanitarian organization to help, we realized that many people fled from the rest of Iraq and went to the Kurdistan area to find refuge. And it was very important as minorities that they felt safe. They were already going into the territory to feel safe, but they wanted to ensure that for their generations to come, for their children to come, that this is a place where they can have a future. Well, we learned that they were drafting a new constitution, and we wanted to make sure that the rights of all people are truly protected and that everyone was equal. So when they started drafting, we asked to bring some of the experts like Dr. Al-Bayadi to the region, and we met with the parliament and we had an amazing workshop sharing from the experiences of Egypt. What were the challenges? How did they overcome matters that were very similar in Kurdistan, like terrorism, like instability, which was happening in Egypt at that time. And they had such a great experience, a wonderful, as if you want to say, taste in their mouth, and they wanted to learn more. So we brought them here. And it was an amazing, successful week where they learned from those who drafted the Egyptian constitution. And they heard about how you negotiate the non-negotiable items. That's something you can't learn in books. That's something you can only learn from experience. And that's what we had this week. We were truly able to talk about some very fundamental issues. The rights of minorities, which we don't call minorities, we call mekawinit, diverse groups. They're not lesser, they're diverse, and they complete the beautiful mosaic territory of Kurdistan. And so the Egyptians were able to share their experiences. How were they able to protect the minorities? How did they protect Christians? How did they protect women? What was it that they needed to put in that constitution to not just guarantee the rights in the law, in the document, but how to implement on the streets?
Who sponsored, Dr. Fadi, who was the main sponsor, who was the main mastermind, if you will, behind this workshop?
Well, actually there are two main organizations, the Roads of Success organization and the Human Rights Independent Council organization of Kurdistan. They were sponsoring the workshop, and I was acting like coordinator and inviting the Egyptian side who were able to share with their experience. So we got selected members of the parliament and former members of the parliament who have the good experience, and we got some of the eminent people who shared in drafting our constitution. They actually were a very good source of inspiration to the Kurdistani side, and we also learned some things from them, especially in the human rights field. They are, I'm afraid to say, they are more advanced than us in the human rights part. But of course, our experience in the parliamentary life and in the constitution is far more than them. So we were able to give them our experience. And this also proves that our constitution is a model constitution. I can't say it's a perfect, because there's nothing perfect. Of course, there's some things we wanted to change in it, but most of it, especially the parts about the rights and freedom, they are actually great. We just need to implement them. So we try to give this experience to them. They were talking and asking and negotiating. I also arranged a visit to our parliament. They met with some leaders from the parliament, from the constitutional committee, and from the foreign affairs committee. They had long talks about our parliament, our government, our strategy, and they were very much welcomed. Of course, we have very good friendly relation with the Kurdistani people, and we used to have some Egyptians from the Kurdistani origin, like Mahmoud al-Maliki and Ali Badr Khan, and Ahmad Shawqi, the famous poet writer. Those are all from Kurdistani origins.
Right.
So we have some history with them, and I believe that we have also some future to have mutual cooperation and to teach them. And this again proves that Egypt is a model country and a strategic country who is able to teach other countries how to write their constitution.
Well, Kurdistan isn't really a country right now. It's an autonomous region.
Sure.
And not everyone, just so we put everything out on the table, not everyone is for its independence, because some people believe that Kurdistan's independence could lead to other groups wanting their independence, which could in turn lead into the breakup of the Middle East into small statelets. What would you say to that?
This is not a matter about independence. This is not what the Constitution is about.
Right.
We are working with what we have now. What we have now is a territory that is working to, again, go back to the mosaic, bring people of diverse groups to one place and have it really a territory that they can feel secure and they can keep moving. Now, whether they're going to become independent or not in the future, that is not the matter at hand. Our matter now is to make sure that in the territory that they're in, it is truly a safe haven. And that's what the world is looking at right now.
Right.
When did Kurdistan really become known? When did it really become on the radar? It became on the radar when they took it upon themselves to be on the front lines, to fight against terror, not just for themselves, but for the entire world. Right now they're proving to the world that they can make it. They can bring people in, as small as they are. They can welcome them. They can help them. Though they are suffering themselves financially, they can help them and they can make them feel like they are equal.
Right.
So I say let's move away from that discussion, because right now at this moment we need to look at, like they say, fi nazif, like there is right now blood.
Right.
There's bleeding.
Right.
People are bleeding, and they're coming to this territory to say, we don't want to immigrate. We don't want to go far. We want to stay in our country, but can we be safe? And that is what this Constitution will do. It will say, right now, the laws of the land are being established to protect you.
Right.
And we're going to look ahead. We're going to talk about the implementation process in the future. And we're going to work together as a people to unify on our common goals.
Right.
And that was a big part of the workshop, actually. We weren't just talking about the laws that need to be put in place or the language that need to be put in place, but we were talking about thaqafa. How do you bring people of diverse groups together in one room to look at each other in the eye and say, wait a second, we're actually very similar.
Right.
I thought we were different. How can we help each other build this country? Because building this country, and again I mean Iraq at this point, building this country and bettering our territory, there will be a future for our children. See, with peacemaking, when you look at really what it's all about, a person may not change his position, but he may change his understanding of what his interests are.
Right.
And that's why unity, that's why peacemaking workshops are so important. And this applies to Egypt as well.
Right.
How do we unify against terror? How do we unify to ensure that there's not instability again? We come together and we focus on our common goals.
Right.
Christian, Muslim, woman, man, we are all citizens, we're all one.
Right. Do we know of any other similar examples or models, if you will, of where a autonomous region has its own constitution and has safeguarded, as you say, its people from their in or within their territories? Because it is a matter to be, I mean, you don't want to look at that aspect of it, but surely when anyone talks about it, that aspect will come up, it at least will cross their minds.
Yeah. I think in Iraq, I think
Right.
what's happening with Kurdistan is very unique.
Right.
I don't know if it's happened before, to be honest with you, but what I can say is I know that this situation there is extremely unique
Right.
for many reasons. Again, you have to look at what's going on in the territory. Look at what's happening now. You are talking about a place that is now called a safe haven.
Right.
It's a safe haven for the entire region. You know, you have Syrians coming in as well. So it has a very unique, you can say unique circumstances that are making this constitution and this territory work in the way that it is. And I think it's not, it's very good to compare, but not when you're comparing two completely different.
Right.
It's like an orange and an apple.
Right.
The situation is different, and I think we need to just focus on what we have at hand.
Did you worry, Dr. Freddy, that this sort of workshop could be misunderstood or misconstrued by, for example, the Iraqi authorities?
I actually didn't think about that. We thought about we want to help the Kurdistani people who are actually seeking help. And as you said, they are not a completely independent country, but they have kind of independence, like a separate state. They are under the federal law of Iraq, but they have their own parliament, their own constitution. So there's a kind of independence. And they
so it's sort of like a US sort of model, where you have each state has its
typically,
own
but
laws.
kind of. Yeah.
Right.
Not really.
Again, it's different. You're looking at completely different circumstances, and we have to look at it for what it is.
So what we're mainly considering how to help those people, and how to show also that how the Egyptian constitution is a great work. It has been many people did their efforts in it, and we are proud with this constitution.
Right.
So
Let's just reverse and say and ask, what did we as Egyptians come out with from this workshop?
Yeah, I thought that we learned some stuff from them, especially in the human rights field. Their human rights organization acts more powerfully than ours. They have more authority. They are not appointed by the government, but they are elected from the parliament, and they have, for example, a permission, or they don't need a permission to go to the prisons or to the police stations to investigate how people are treated and how the human rights are kept. In Egypt, we still have to get permission for our Human Rights Council to go to visit prisons or things like that. So they are a little bit more advanced in the human rights field, and we learned some stuff from them. And actually, I made a link between their organization and our Human Rights Council, and I believe this link will be also of mutual benefit for both sides when they work on it.
Okay, and finally, my final question to you, Ms. Jacqueline, do you think that this was going to be perhaps a starting point for better relations and for more cooperations in other areas with Kurdistan?
Absolutely. I've been to Kurdistan this year 4 times.
Right.
And I could say it is a wonderful place with amazing people that really have potential, and they will be great people to work with.
Right, and with those words, I'm going to have to wrap it up. Thank you very much, both of you, for coming in. Ms. Jacqueline Isaac, American-Egyptian lawyer and Vice President of the Roads of Success humanitarian organization. Dr. Freddy El-Bayadi, politician and full Member of Parliament. Thank you very much for coming in tonight.
Have a good night.
Ladies
Happy
and
Ramadan.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, on that note, let's take a look at the following report and more to learn more about the holy month of Ramadan before I welcome my guest here in the studio. Stay with us. Thank you very much.
Ramadan is the 9th month of the Islamic calendar. It is a time of fasting where each day Muslims all over the world abstain from eating, drinking, smoking, as well as participating in anything that is ill-natured or excessive from dawn until the sun sets. Ramadan was the month in which the initial verses of the Holy Quran were shown to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Fasting is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, one of the main types of worship. Restraint from everyday enjoyment and curbing ill intentions and cravings are considered as an act of compliance and obedience to God, as well as amends for sins, faults, and mistakes. Fasting is intended to educate the Muslim in spirituality, humility, and patience. It is a time to cleanse the soul, focus attention on God, and put into practice selflessness. Ramadan is a time for Muslims to fast for the sake of God and to put forward more prayer than is customary. Among the reasons behind fasting are to appreciate and give thanks for pleasures, for fasting means giving up eating, drinking, and other worldly pleasures, and by giving them up for a short time, we begin to appreciate their value. Fasting also aims at enabling us to control our desires, because when a person is full, his desires grow, but if he is hungry, then his desire becomes weak. Among the benefits of fasting is that it makes us feel compassion and empathy towards the poor, because when the fasting person tastes the pain of hunger for a while, He remembers those who are in this situation all the time, so he will hasten to do acts of kindness to them and show compassion towards them. Fasting also humiliates and weakens Satan or the shaitan. It weakens the effects of his whispers on a person and reduces his sins. The fasting person is training himself to remember that Allah is always watching, so he gives up the things that he desires even though he is able to take them because he knows that Allah can see him. Fasting means developing an attitude of self-discipline towards this world and its desires and seeking that which is with Allah. It makes the Muslim get used to doing a great deal of acts of worship because the fasting person usually does more acts of worship and gets used to that. During Ramadan, Muslims request forgiveness for his sins in the past, prayer for direction and assistance in abstaining from everyday troubles, and endeavor to cleanse themselves through self-control and great acts of faith.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and joining me here in the studio, Mr. Mohammed Al-Khafif, Islamic researcher. Thank you very much for coming in tonight.
Thank you very much.
And happy Ramadan to you.
Same to you.
Let me ask you, since we're addressing a foreign, if you will, viewer, and perhaps highlighting, trying to better understand or better explain to them what Ramadan is and what the rituals are, let me start off by asking you, how did Ramadan come into being?
Well, the name Ramadan itself is the name of the 9th month of the Hijri calendar, or the calendar that even was prevailing before Islam. As you know, the Hijri calendar started by the beginning of the year during which Prophet Muhammad ﷺ traveled from Mecca to Medina. This was year 1. Actually, explaining Ramadan and its significance is not as difficult as some would think, because fasting as a principle or as a divine ordainment was part of all the previous religions. Maybe some details are different, but the concept and the importance of fasting has always been very significant in other religions, starting with Prophet Abraham and so forth. In Islam, the fasting of Ramadan is compulsory.
Right.
Okay, and it covers the whole month. And Muslims should refrain from all worldly desires from dawn till sunset. And in parallel with that, Muslims should also refrain from all that is not commended.
Right.
No lying, no cheating, no bad wording, no evil thoughts, and so forth. It is actually a practice that trains the body and trains the spirit at the same time.
Yes. Let's talk a little bit about that, expand that particular thought, because people think that Ramadan is just about not eating and not drinking water for a certain amount of hours, perhaps obviously reading the Quran, praying, and so on and so forth. But tahdhib al-nafs, or getting control of your spirit or of your desires, is also a very important aspect throughout the holy month, not just during the fasting hours. Am I
Absolutely.
correct? And how does one do that?
Well, the concept of fasting covers two aspects, visible or physical aspects as well as spiritual aspects. And in fact, even the physical aspects are closely related to the spiritual ones and not the opposite. So refraining from eating and drinking, which is the apparent side of of fasting, is actually a kind of training that a person or a believer should be in control of his desires rather than his desires being controlling him. So from this context, it is a spiritual training as well as all the other spiritual sides. There is a very clear saying of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, stating that he who does not refrain from cheating, lying, and doing all those evil things during Ramadan has no need to stop eating or stop drinking, because he is defeating the whole principle. So, and there's another aspect to fasting as well. The fasting itself is invisible. All the other aspects are seen: prayer, almsgiving, pilgrimage, whatever, are all things that are positively done.
Right.
But fasting is a mode of worship that is by not doing.
Right.
And that is why, because it is not visible to anybody except God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states that reward for fasting is up to me, and there is no intermediate between me and my believers in rewarding fasting.
Right. Let me go back to some of the basics to better explain them as well. How did fasting during the holy month of Ramadan become obligatory?
It became obligatory after the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ went to Medina, and before that, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ used to fast the way previous religions did, especially Prophet Abraham. And actually, the fasting of Prophet Abraham is stricter than Muslim fasting, because this type of fasting meant that a person could only eat or drink between sundown and complete darkness, between Maghrib and Isha. And the fasting would begin by darkness till sunset the next day. So this was something that was quite difficult for Muslims. And at a certain moment, Umar ibn Khattab, who he is, asked Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, do you really have to do that? May I please shut down this thing? Excuse me, I'm very sorry.
It's okay. Please go ahead.
Go to sleep.
No problem. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Do we really have to do it this way? So Prophet Muhammad ﷺ explained to him, no, this is not our way of fasting. This was Prophet Abraham's fasting.
Right.
And it is very clearly stated in the Holy Quran, the timing of the fasting and the timing of where Muslims are allowed to eat and drink and so forth.
Right. Perhaps a foreigner wouldn't understand the exact significance of the holy month if they weren't told of its significance to Muslims and to Islam. I'd like you to take this opportunity and to better explain to them how important this holy month is to the religion and to Muslims as well.
In fact, the Holy Quran was first revealed to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ during the month of Ramadan. And the Holy Quran links this occasion with the fasting of that month, signifying its huge role in Muslim belief. The Quran is our operating manual, as we can sometimes call it. Another thing is that during that month, Muslims were promised that worshipping during a certain night would be equivalent to worshipping 1,000 months.
Yes, which is
outside that night. Again, this is another honor bestowed on the month of Ramadan. The rewards for almsgiving and for charity during the month of Ramadan are multiplied hundreds of folds. Especially that during that month, Muslims should feel the difficulty of hunger, the difficulty of heat when it comes in summer, the cold when it comes in winter, Because as you know,
So it's also creating empathy, isn't it? When you
Absolutely.
fast, you have this feeling of empathy for the others, for poorer people, for people who suffer, who don't have the luxuries that some may take advantage of.
exactly so,
Right.
exactly so. And of course, this kind of empathy encourages people even further to be more charitable during that month.
Right. How important is also charity, giving alms during Ramadan?
It is first there is a kind of charity which is called zakah, which is an obligatory kind of charity that should be given during the month of Ramadan before the feast.
Right.
Any additional or voluntary charity is very much encouraged and very much rewarded during the month of Ramadan again.
Right. Now, with because we always like to highlight the spiritual side of Ramadan, which sometimes I think gets lost, especially, but it's highlighted in other religions. When it comes to Islam as a particular religion, perhaps it isn't highlighted as much, the spiritual side, the more peaceful side of the religion, because obviously Western media and terrorism and so on and so forth. And I wanted to take this opportunity to highlight the peaceful side and the more spiritual side of Islam. Now, during the holy month, obviously, sometimes you can get angry, you can get short-tempered because you're hungry, you're not drinking, and so on and so forth. And it brings us back to this whole tahdhib an-nafs, the idea, the notion of that. How do you think, how could one, if one feels that one's going to lose their temper, or one feels that they're going to sort of ruin their fast in any way, how does one come back from that?
Okay, there are three ways to overcome such a dilemma. Actually, let's call them three levels. Those who fear punishment, okay, will remember the punishment and will refrain. Those who are after the reward will always remember the reward, and they will do whatever they can do to get the reward. The highest level of all is those who love God and know that not doing those bad things will please Him, will strive to do that as well. So it depends upon human nature. Human nature is not a standard issue. So people vary. Those who fear punishment, those who want the reward, and those who do that in love of God, subhanahu wa ta'ala.
How important is spirituality in Islam?
Islam is spirituality, actually,
Right.
if we can put it that way, because all the faculties of the human person or the believer are actually dedicated to elevate and to strengthen the spiritual side. And the more the spiritual side, the stronger the spiritual side becomes, the more it is able to tame the physical side.
Right.
And vice versa. Those who overnourish the physical side suffer a lot by losing a lot of their spirituality.
Right. How does one use or utilize the holy month to elevate themselves spiritually?
Again, there are positive actions like prayer. It is prayer. Night prayer is very highly recommended. Qiyam, reading or reciting the Holy Quran, charity, and so forth. All this is the scene or the active aspects of the matter. The spiritual side englobes a lot of to make it simple for Westerners, it is something very close to meditation, but a little bit higher.
Right.
التدبر والتفكر.
Right. Which is usually also required when reading the Holy Quran.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
To read, to understand, and to think.
That's right.
So Islam encourages thinking.
Absolutely.
Right.
If we look at how many times the Holy Quran mentions thinking, contemplating, pondering, reasoning, we will find that the whole book is about the human mind, of course, in addition to the human heart.
Right. Tell me a little bit more about that. Give me examples of that.
Okay. Let us remember that in Islam, God has 99 names.
Right.
Okay? Each of the 99 names has an interpretation which describes His almightiness. So part of the contemplation, part of the meditation would be to meditate on the holy names of Allah. Okay? Part of the meditation, as you said, is to contemplate on the verses of the Holy Quran. Another very important thing is supplication. Supplication to God is something that is very critical to a Muslim, and there is a saying by Prophet Muhammad ﷺ that those who do not supplicate actually anger God, because God likes to be supplicated to, likes to be asked, likes to be venerated. So the more the supplication, the more the rewards.
In Islam, supplication also comes in many forms or at different times during the day. It is also perhaps not mandatory, but mustahab or preferred. What are the best times for supplication? Are there particular times that it should be performed at? And also, let me just add to that, is it more of a conversation with God? Or is that like a very high level of spirituality?
No, about the times. The best of times is before dawn, after the dawn prayer until sunrise, before sundown, and in the depth of night.
Right.
Okay. These are the most recommended times for prayer, but they are not. Supplication is not limited to those times. Anybody who supplicates at any time of the day is welcome and is rewarded as well. But these are the peaks. What was the other part of the question?
The other part of the question was, is it more of a conversation with God, or is that a very high level of supplication?
Well,
or spirituality, rather?
It is both.
Right.
It is both, actually, because even if you reflect on the supplications that are mentioned in the Holy Quran, you will find that they are, first, they are very sublime, as you said, but in the meanwhile, they are in the form of dialogue. The Muslim person is addressing in the second person. Please God give me, please God help me, please God protect me. He's not talking about may God protect me. No, it's a dialogue, and the more it is a dialogue, the more it is spiritually rewarding to the Muslim, and the more it is eligible to bring what's required.
A lot of people wonder if they are not so religious during the whole year and they become more religious or more spiritual during the holy month, whether or not their good deeds, their religious inclinations are accepted by God. What would you say to that?
Well, it depends on the inner self, or what we call in niyyah, the intention. Some people may not have enough willpower to be as strong outside Ramadan as they are in Ramadan. So those people are on the road. By time, Ramadan will overflow on the other months.
Right.
Other people, unfortunately, have some kind of defiance. Okay, this is the month of Ramadan. I know I should do so and so. Oh, Ramadan is over. Oh.
Right.
These are just under the mercy of God, whether He accepts them, whether He brings them back to the right path or not. But definitely, those kind of persons have a more difficult path than the first case.
If we come back to talk a little bit more about Ramadan and explain it a little bit better, the holy month is divided into 3 stages. According to a hadith by the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he said, its Ramadan is the month whose beginning is mercy, its middle forgiveness, and its end emancipation from fire.
That's right.
Please better explain the hadith for us.
This hadith is a kind of demonstration of God's mercy and blessings. Actually, we cannot say that in the second 10 days of Ramadan there is no mercy. We cannot say that in the third 10 days of Ramadan there is no forgiveness. Right. Actually, it is a kind of description how much good is there in the month to show people that here there is mercy, here there is love, here is forgiveness and so forth. All over the place, the three prevail.
Right. But during the last 10 days, we know that the last 10 days, al-Ashr al-Awakhir min al-Shahr, the last 10 days of the holy month of Ramadan, are perhaps to many Muslims, I think they believe that this is the time for them to be at their utmost religious. Tell us a little bit more about the significance of the last 10 days of Ramadan and obviously Salat al-Tahajjud that is performed especially during those last 10 days.
This goes back to the hadith of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, that there is one night in Ramadan which is worth the worship of 1,000 months. He stated clearly that this night is one of the last 10 nights of Ramadan. But he never said which one. Some people try to deduct that it's the 27th, some people say the 23rd, some people say that it's an odd night, 21st, 23rd or 25th. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ gave us a great gift by not stating that, because this encourages us to do our best during the whole 10 days. And that's why, again, the Salat al-Tahajjud, which is a form of night prayer, during which the Holy Quran is read from start to end. Right. Again, hoping that one of those nights would be the night that we are looking for.
Right. Laylat al-Qadr, tell me a little bit more about that particular night.
The history behind that was that some of the Muslims came to know that one of the Israelites has worshipped God for 1,000 months. Right. And they became envious. Okay? So Prophet Muhammad ﷺ gave them the good tidings that there is one night in the month of Ramadan that supersedes or exceeds in reward those 1,000 months. And there is a verse in the Holy Quran, Surah Al-Qadr, which states that clearly, that worship correctly and humbly and purely during that night supersedes the reward of the worship of 1,000 months. So this was another gift to Muslims from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Mr. Muhammad, I wanted to ask you, just because we're addressing a Western audience. Now, when a Western audience hears all these positive elements about Islam, do you think also Muslims have an obligation, just every ordinary Muslim, especially those living in the West, has an obligation to be an ambassador for this religion that has been jeopardized by extremism and terrorists?
It has become a very crucial obligation now for each Muslim to be, as you said, an ambassador. And I was asked this question before here about what can we do about the image of Islam abroad. And it is my conviction, and I hope I'm not very wrong, that the image has everything to do with the reality. Right. If our reality is not as good as we want it to be, we cannot expect that our image would be good, and vice versa. So it turns out to be that we have to improve and elevate our reality so that what reflects from that reality is the right image.
Right, and when you do that, should you start with yourself?
There is no other way.
Right.
There's no other way.
Finally, perhaps for someone who is non-Muslim and who is also watching us today, and they have Muslim friends who are fasting during the holy month of Ramadan, how can, and this is something, a question that I found actually someone had posted on the internet, how can they help their fellow Muslims during their fasting hours?
Feelings, sympathizing and empathizing, appreciating the difficulty that they will be passing through, trying as much as possible to make life a little bit easier for them. Muslims, of course, find it not very easy to fast abroad. But now, in many communities where where Islam is becoming known, those factors are being taken into consideration.
Right.
And many non-Muslims celebrate Ramadan and the feast with Muslims and so forth.
Mr. Mohammed Al-Khafif, Islamic researcher, I thank you very much for this wonderful discussion. Thank you very much for coming in. Ladies and gentlemen, again, I wish you all a very happy and blessed month. Happy Ramadan to all our viewers. I'm Nancy Sarah Barakat, wishing you all a very good evening. Thank you.